In this article, we will build a React application using class components. Then we'll convert it to functional components using React hooks in a step-by-step way. By building this app, you will learn how to make API call show to implement load more functionality, how to debug application issue show to use async/await, how to update the component when something changed show to fix the infinite loop issue in the use effect hook, how to refactor class-based components into functional components with hooks, and much more. So let's get started. Want to learn Redux from the absolute beginning and build a food ordering app from scratch? Check out my Mastering Redux course. Initial project setup. Create a new project using Create React App. Once the project is created, delete all files from the src folder and create the index.js file and the styles.css file inside the src folder. Also, create a components folders inside the src folder. Install the Axios library by executing the following command from the project folder. Open the styles.css file and add the contents from this GitHub repo to it. How to create the initial pages. Create a new file called header.js inside the components folder with the following content. Create a new file called app.js inside the src folder with the following content. Now, open the index.js file and add the following content to it. Now, start the application by running the yarn start command from the terminal. You will see the following screen if you access the application at http://localhost 3000/. How to make an API call. We will be using the random users API to get a list of random users. So open your app.js file and add the component didMount method inside the component. Also, import Axios at the top of the file. Your entire app.js file will look like this now. Here, we're making an API call to get a list of 10 records initially to the URL https://randomuser.me/api/?page=0 Now, if you check the application, you will see the response from the API in the console. Now, let's declare a state to store the result and flags related to the loading and error messages. Replace the contents of app.js with the following code. Here, we've declared a state directly inside the class using class properties syntax, which is a common way to write state in class-based components. Then, inside the component didMount method, we're first setting the isLoading state to true before making the API call. Once we get the API response, we're storing the result in the users array which is declared in the state. We're also setting the error message state to empty, so that if there are any previous errors they will be cleared out. And in the .catch block, we're setting the error message in case there is any error while making an API call. Then, we're using the .finally block to set the isLoading state to false. Using finally helps us avoid code duplication here because we don't need to set isLoading to false in .then and in the .catch block again. This is because the finally block will always be executed whether it's successful or not. And in the render method, we're displaying either the error message or loading message along with the users array from the state in the console. Now, if you check the application, you will see the user's information in the console on success or an error message on the UI for API failure. How to display the user's information. Now, let's display the user's information on the screen. Create a new file user.js inside the components folder with the following content. Now, create a new file users list.js inside the components folder with the following content. Now, open the app.js file and replace the render method with the following code. Here, we're passing the users array as a prop to the users list component. Inside the users list component, We're looping over the array and sending the user information to the user component by spreading out all the properties of the individual user as props. This finally displays the data on the screen. Also, import the users list component at the top of the file. If you check the application now, you will see the following screen. As you can see, on every page refresh, a new set of random users is displayed on the screen. How to add the load more functionality. Now, let's add the load more functionality, which will let our app load the next set of 10 users on every load more click. Change the render method of the app.js file to the following code. Here, we've added the isLoading check inside the button to display either the loading or load more text on the button. Add a new page property to the state and initialize it to 0. And add the load more handler function before the render method to increment the page state value by 1 on every button click. Here, we're using the previous state to calculate the next state value of the page. So the above code is the same as the below code. We're just using ES6 shorthand syntax for returning an object from the function. Now, inside the component didMount method, change the API URL from the below code to this code. Here, we're using the ES6 template literal syntax to use the dynamic value of the page state to load the next set of users on every button click. Destructure the page from state inside the component didMount method like this. Want to explore all the ES6 Plus features in detail? Check out my Mastering Modern JavaScript book. Now, let's check the application's functionality. As you can see, when we click on the Load More button, the page state is changing in the React DevTools, but we're not getting the new list of users displayed on the screen. This is because even though we're changing the page state, we're not making API call again to get the next set of users with the changed page value. So let's fix this. Create a new Load Users function above the Load More function and move all the code from component didMount to inside the Load Users function. Then call the Load Users function from the component didMount method. Also, add a component didUpdate method inside the app component like this. As we're updating the value of the page state in the Load More function once the state is updated, the component didUpdate method will be called. So we're checking if the previous state value of page is not equal to the current state value. Then we make the API call again by calling the Load Users function. Check out my previous article to learn more about why and when we need to use the component didUpdate method. Your complete app.js file will look like this now. Now, if you check the application again by running the yarn start command, you will see the following screen. As you can see, we're getting a new list of users displayed on every Load More button click. But the issue is that we're only able to see 10 users at a time. So let's make changes to add new users to the already displayed list of users. For this, we need to change the way we're setting the user's state. Our current setState call inside the Load Users function looks like this. Here, we're always replacing the users array with the new set of users. So change the above setState call to the following code. Here, we're using the updater syntax of setState. We're creating a new array by spreading out the already added users by using previous state.users. And then we're adding a new set of users by using response.data.results. So this way we'll not lose the previous loaded users' data, and we'll also be able to append a new set of users. Now, if you check the application again, you will see the correct behavior of data loading. How to improve the code using async/await. If you check the Load Users function, you will see that the code looks complex and difficult to read. We can fix this using async/await syntax. First, we need to mark the Load Users function as async. Because we can use the await keyword only inside the function, which is declared as async. Now, replace the Load Users function with the following code. Here, We've used the await keyword before the axios.get call, so the next line of code, which is the setState call, will not be executed until we get the response from the API. If there is any error while getting the response from the API, the catch block will be executed. The finally block will set the isLoading state to false. Your changed app.js file will look like this now. Now, the load users function code looks much cleaner and easier to understand than it was before. And if you check the application, you will see that the application is also working correctly. How to refactor class component code to functional component code. We're done building out the complete functionality of the app. So let's refactor the code to use functional components with React hooks. If you're new to React hooks, check out my article here. For an introduction to hooks, create a new file called appfunctional.js inside the src folder with the following content. We've created a new file for the functional component, so you will be able to compare both the code and keep it for your reference. Now, open the index.js file and replace the contents of the file with the following code. Here, we've used the app functional component inside the render method, and we've also added the import for the same at the top of the file. Now, if you restart your application using the yarn start command, you will see the following screen. So we're correctly displaying the app functional component code on the screen. Now, replace the contents of the app functional component with the following code. Here, we've initially declared the required states using the useState hook. Then we've added a useEffect hook and passed an empty array as the second argument to it. This means that the code inside the useEffect hook will be executed only once when the component is mounted. We've moved the entire load users function inside the useEffect hook and then called it inside the hook like this. We've also removed all the references to this .state, as functional components don't need this context. Before making the API call, we're setting the isLoading state to true using setIsLoadingTrue. As we already have access to the users array inside the component, we're directly setting as a new array for the setUsers function like this. If you want to know why we can't use the async keyword directly for the useEffect hook function, check out this article. Then we've changed the load more function from the below code to this code. Note that to declare a function in functional components, you need to add const or let before the declaration. As the function is not going to change, it's recommended to use const such as const load more ==. Then we've copied the render method content as it is inside the app functional component for returning the JSX. We've also changed onClick equals this.loadMore to onClick equals loadMore. Now, if you check the application, you will see the following screen. As you can see, the users are correctly getting loaded, but the load more functionality does not work. This is because we're only making the API call once when the component is mounted, as we're passing the empty dependency array as the second argument to the useEffect hook. To make the API call again when the page state changes, we need to add the page as a dependency for the useEffect hook like this. The above useEffect is the same as writing the below code. UseEffect makes it really easy to write less code that is easy to understand. So now with this change, the code inside the useEffect hook will be executed when the component mounts as well as when the page state is changed. Now, if you check the application, you will see that the load more functionality is working again as expected. But if you check the terminal/command prompt, you might see a warning as shown below if you have ESLint installed on your machine. These warnings help us avoid issues in our application that might occur later. So it's always good to fix them if possible. As we're referencing the user's state inside the load users function, we need to include that also in the dependency array. So let's do that. Include the users as a dependency along with the page like this. Let's check the application functionality now. As you can see, we're continuously getting a new set of users as we scroll the page, and the application is going in an infinite loop. This is because when the component is mounted, The code inside the useEffect hook will be executed to make an API call. Once we get the result, we're setting the users array as users is mentioned in the dependencies list. Once the users array is changed, useEffect will run again and it will happen again and again, creating an infinite loop. So to fix this, we need to avoid referencing the external users array somehow. To do that, let's use the updater syntax of setState to set the user's state. Therefore, change the below code to this code. Here, we're using the previous value of users to create a new users array. Now, we can remove the users from the useEffect dependencies array as we're not referencing the external users variable. Your changed useEffect hook will look like this now. If you check the application now, you will see that the application is working as expected without any issues. And we're also not getting any errors in the terminal now.